I never thought the HOA would go this far, blocking my only road with fence like they own the land. I never thought I'd wake up to find strangers drilling posts into dirt my grandfather died protecting. I never thought a simple driveway could turn into a battleground. But when an HOA tries to cut off your access to your own ranch, you learn fast who you really are. And you learn what kind of man you become when people push you too far. They thought I'd accept their rules. They thought the fence would trap me. They thought I'd bow down and ask permission to enter my own property. But instead, I did something they never saw coming. The morning it all started. The sun had barely risen over the ridge, casting long shadows across my ranch. I remember the smell of the cold dirt, the quiet wind rolling across the fields, and the comforting sound of the horses shifting in the stable. Everything felt like any other peaceful morning, until I heard the metallic clank. It wasn't a natural sound. It wasn't something that belonged on my land. It was sharp, deliberate, forced. I stepped outside, and there they were, 3 men I'd never seen before, wearing neon vests and using a post driver to hammer a steel pole into ground right across my driveway. A massive stack of fence panels rested on the back of their truck. For a second, I actually thought I was dreaming. Who wakes up to find construction crews fencing off their only road in and out? I asked them what the hell they were doing. They didn't look up. One of them just pointed toward a woman standing near a black SUV. Clipboard, sunglasses, stiff posture, the classic HOA stance. I'd never met her, never seen her around the neighborhood, and I certainly never voted for her. But apparently she believed she owned my morning, my ranch, and my road. She walked toward me like she was approaching an employee who was late to a shift she didn't even schedule. She didn't greet me. She didn't explain politely. She simply said, "You've been using HOA-maintained access without authorization. So we're correcting that. Authorization. On a road that my family had used for 62 years. I told her she had the wrong property, the wrong man, and the wrong day, but she stayed firm. Her logic was that the HOA technically controlled the easement leading to my ranch, even though the land was still deeded to me. Their argument? Because HOA residents occasionally use a service road next to it, the HOA had decided to adopt the entire access corridor. Adopt, in HOA language, means we want it, therefore it's ours. She informed me they'd be locking the fence. My access would be subject to compliance approval. And because I refused to join the HOA, something I had zero legal obligation to do, they would deny my access until further review. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the alternative was punching through her SUV window. This fence wasn't just an inconvenience. This was my road to feed my animals, transport hay, haul equipment, and simply live. Blocking it wasn't just illegal, it was dangerous. But she didn't care. Her clipboard told her she was right. I called county officials. They told me it was a civil matter. I called the sheriff. They said as long as there was no violence, they couldn't step in. I even contacted a lawyer who told me the case was winnable eventually. Eventually doesn't feed livestock. By noon, the fence was complete, 8 feet tall, padlocked, reinforced steel, with a single gate dead center. They acted like they were protecting a national monument instead of blocking a rural rancher from his own life. I stood there for a long time, staring at the fence. Every time I walked closer, I felt this heat building in my chest, a slow burn that started deep in my gut and rose like fire. I'm not the kind of man who enjoys conflict. But I'm also not the kind who allows people to choke off my lifeline and walk away smug. My neighbors stopped by. Some pretended not to see. Some whispered, "That's messed up, man," before driving off. But not one of them stood up to the HOA. Not one. That's when I realized the truth. HOAs don't scare people with rules. They scare them with inconvenience, with paperwork, with fines, with meetings, with threats of legal action. People let little tyrants take control because saying no takes courage, and courage is expensive. I paced my property for hours, trying to figure out what to do. Breaking the fence would make me the criminal, even though I was the victim. Go to court would take months. Letting it go was not an option. I needed something clever, something legal, something that slapped the HOA across the face without giving them ammunition against me. That night, Somewhere between rage and exhaustion, I saw something on the fence post. The small rectangular plaque the workers had drilled into the steel. A responsibility notice. It read, HOA access gate. All users must comply with posted terms. Posted terms. That wording hit me like electricity. If they were declaring the road and gate as HOA-controlled public access, if they insisted on adopting it, then they unintentionally opened a door. A legal one. A very profitable one. I couldn't sleep. My brain started spinning with possibilities. If they claimed this was now an HOA-managed access point, I could reciprocate. I could post my own terms. Terms the HOA and every resident would be legally obligated to follow. The fence they built wasn't a barrier. It was an opportunity. I spent the entire night drafting plan, running numbers, checking county ordinances, calling a friend who works in rural road management. And by sunrise, I had the perfect idea. A petty idea. A legal idea. An idea that would make the HOA choke on their own paperwork. The kind of idea that, once you think of it, you can't unthink. The kind of idea Machiavelli himself would clap for. The kind of idea that would turn that fence from a weapon into my favorite source of income. But before I put the plan into action, something happened that made the situation even worse. And even more personal. Something that made sure there was no turning back, no compromise, no apology strong enough to stop what I was about to do. And it all started with the HOA president showing up the next morning, not with an explanation, but with a warning. The HOA president arrived the next morning with the kind of confidence only a laminated badge and a fragile ego can give a person. She stepped out of her SUV like she owned not just a road, but the air around it. She didn't bother with greetings or small talk. She walked right up to the fence, tapped the lock, and said in a voice dripping with authority, "Tamper with HOA property is a punishable offense. Please be advised." Punishable offense. The words hit me like gravel thrown at a windshield. I asked her what she meant by tampering. Considering I hadn't touched the fence yet, that's when she held up a stack of papers, violation notices she had already filled out. They were dated for the next 3 days, as if she had pre-written my crimes in advance. According to her, if I so much as leaned on the fence, it would count as attempted interference with HOA installations. I laughed again, my new default reaction around these people. As she read item after item, the warnings weren't just threatening. They were personal. The tone said, "We control you. We control your access. And we control what happens next." She finished her little speech and added, "Your refusal to cooperate with the HOA has consequences. The board will be reviewing your conduct." My conduct, on land I legally owned, on a road they had illegally blocked. I didn't respond. Instead, I stared at her, not angrily, not loudly. I simply looked through her, the same way she looked through me. And for the first time, I saw something in her eyes, a flicker of uncertainty. Bullies recognize the moment when prey stops being prey. She took a step back, cleared her throat, and quickly tried to recover her dominance. If you have concerns, you can bring them to the next HOA meeting in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. She wanted me to wait 2 weeks to access my own ranch freely. I watched her get back into her SUV and drive away. Her exit was slow and dramatic, like she wanted to show me the full power of her taillights. As soon as she was gone, I walked the length of the fence again, quietly, methodically. I didn't touch it. I didn't test the lock. I just observed, measured with my eyes, timed the traffic of people who used that access point throughout the day. And then something interesting happened. An HOA resident pulled up in a golf cart, stopped at the gate, punched in a code on the keypad, and drove right through onto my access road. He waved casually, like it was the most normal thing in the world to trespass across ranch land he didn't own. Another resident followed behind him in a small SUV, using the same code. The HOA wasn't just blocking me. They were using the gate as if they had full authority over the road. That's when my plan clicked into place so smoothly, it felt like the universe was whispering, "Do it." I went back inside my home and drafted the document. A legal notice, a posted term sheet, a user agreement. Simple, clear, and beautifully unavoidable. Because if an HOA can declare a privately owned road as shared access, then the owner can impose shared access terms. Terms like usage fees, terms like maintenance contributions, terms like toll charges. And the best part? Since the HOA erected the gate, they unintentionally gave me the perfect enforcement mechanism. A gate you control is an inconvenience. A gate they built on your land is leverage. I printed the sign, bold letters, laminated cover, and a legal disclaimer drafted with the help of my road management friend. I didn't need lawyers to file a lawsuit when all I needed was a posted public notice. Before installing anything, I documented the fence with photos, timestamps, property lines, and deed records. I wanted a record of every nail, every panel, every bolt they put on my land without permission. Proof is like a loaded magazine. You keep it ready, but you only fire it when you need to. That afternoon, I called the county office again. Instead of complaining, I asked a single question. If a privately owned road is being used by non-owner residents, what is the required protocol for authorizing toll usage? There was silence on the phone, followed by a cautious, well, if the road is private, the owner is allowed to charge fee for access, as long as the terms are posted visibly. I see, I said. And what counts as visible? A sign on or near the access point is sufficient. That's all I needed. One sentence. One confirmation. One perfectly legal green light. As the day faded into evening, I gathered my tools and returned to the fence. I didn't break anything. I didn't touch their lock. Instead, I drilled 2 small screws on my side property line into a post that the HOA had placed illegally. Then I mounted my laminated sign. And what a beautiful sign it was. Private Ranch Access Road, toll required. All users, including HOAs and residents, must pay posted fees. Below it, in clean, precise bullet points. Daily access fee, $10. Weekly access fee, $50. Unauthorized access, $200 fine. Gate usage automatically implies agreement with terms. It ended with a line that made me smile. Fees go toward road maintenance. Non-payment will result in civil claims. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't threatening. It was simply official. By the time I finished installing the sign, the sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving a deep gold glow over the gate. I stood back and admired my work. The gate that once blocked me was now a toll booth, and the people who erected it had no idea they had just turned my land into a revenue stream. The next morning, I didn't have to wait long for the HOA's reaction. Around 7:30 a.m., a small line of cars formed at the gate. Residents were confused. One man leaned out his window, squinting at a sign like it was written in Greek. Another woman stepped out of her car and gasped dramatically, her hand flying to her chest as if she'd discovered a crime scene. Within minutes, the HOA president returned, screeching to a halt in front of the gate. Her sunglasses were gone, replaced by wide, furious eyes. She stormed toward me, because of course I was standing nearby, acting like I was just enjoying the morning air. "What is this?" she shouted, jabbing a finger toward the sign like she was trying to poke a hole in it. I shrugged casually. Posted terms, as required by county ordinance. You can't charge residents to use this gate. You claim this access point was adopted and maintained by the HOA. It is. Then it's shared public access. And shared public access requires posted terms. Mine are posted. She froze. Her mouth worked, but no sound came out. She looked like a modem failing to connect. "You can't do this," she finally hissed. "I already did." "You'll remove it." "No." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "This is extortion." I smiled. "No, this is maintenance contribution, just like HOA dues." Her face turned red. Residents in their cars started murmuring, some filming, some whispering, and the more people watched, the more her power drained. HOA authority depends on an audience that believes in it. Once they see the cracks, everything collapses. Finally, she snapped, "We will not be paying your ridiculous toll." "No problem," I said. "Then your residents can use the alternate route." "There is no alternate route." I nodded slowly. "I know." Her eyes widened as the realization hit her. They weren't blocking me anymore. They had trapped themselves. The HOA president stormed off, screaming into her phone, calling an emergency board meeting. Residents backed up, reversing down the road to find another exit that didn't exist. People were angry, honking, yelling, not at me, but at her. Within an hour, the HOA board gathered at the gate. 5 of them stood in a row, looking like they were about to perform a very cranky barbershop quartet. They demanded I remove the sign. They threatened lawsuits. They threatened fines. They threatened to revoke my community privileges. I pointed to the property map, taped to a clipboard. This gate is on land you don't own. You installed it without permission. You obstructed a private agricultural road. And now, you're using it for community traffic. Legally, that makes us a toll access point unless we negotiate terms. Negotiate? The treasurer barked. We are negotiating with you. I nodded again. Then residents will continue paying the toll. It's $10, not $10,000. The board members turned to a crowd of residents, who were now growing louder, angrier, more restless. People wanted to leave for work. Kids needed to be dropped off. Calendars were shifting. Schedules collapsing. The HOA wasn't just an inconvenience now. They were the obstacle. And nobody likes being trapped by the same people who claim to manage the community for your convenience. Within minutes, angry residents demanded the HOA pay the toll on their behalf. Others shouted at the board for causing this mess. Some turned on each other. It was beautiful chaos. The president tried to shout over them, but voices drowned her out. Why are we paying him? Someone yelled. He owns the road, another snapped. You blocked his access first. Just pay the damn toll. We told you not to mess with his property. The HOA board had lost the crowd. The president turned back to me with a furious glare. We'll be back, she snarled. I nodded. Gate will still be here. As the board left, residents reluctantly paid the toll, right there, cash or online, because they had no choice. Within 2 hours, I made more money from that gate than the HOA president made in a week. But the real storm hadn't even arrived yet, because that evening, the HOA came back with papers, threats, and a plan they thought would destroy mine. They just didn't know. I had already prepared the next move, a move so sharp, so strategic, so perfectly timed, it would end the HOA's power over my land forever. By the time the sun started setting that evening, I could feel it in the air, pressure, not the kind that breaks you, but the kind that tells you the other side is about to make their biggest mistake yet. The wind was picking up, rolling across the ranch, carrying the sound of distant engines. I knew exactly who was coming. Sure enough, around 6 p.m., 3 HOA board cars rolled up the gate like they were arriving for a police raid they weren't authorized to conduct. Their headlights washed over the fence, illuminating the sign I had posted. The president stepped out first, followed by the treasurer and the secretary, the holy trinity of petty authority. She held a stack of papers as thick as a phone book. I knew this routine. They were trying to intimidate me with printed threats. Paper bullies. They walked toward me in formation, like they practiced in the mirror. This, she announced, handing me a packet, is a cease and desist order. You are to remove your so-called toll sign immediately or face legal repercussions up to and including fines, property liens, and mandatory hearings. I flipped through the pages slowly, pretending to read them, even though I already knew exactly how worthless they were. HOA rules don't apply to properties outside the HOA. They could threaten, whine, or stomp their feet, but their printed tantrums meant nothing. I kept flipping. She kept talking. You are violating community access laws. You are extorting residents. You are acting without board approval, and we will not tolerate. I held up a finger. She stopped. That silence? Beautiful. Then I said calm and steady. Page 3, paragraph 2. Read the second line. She frowned and snatched the papers back, scanning quickly. Her eyes reached a line and froze. Restrictions apply only to HOA properties or properties under HOA authority. I didn't have to say anything. Her face collapsing told me she had just realized she tried to enforce rules on land she didn't control. The treasurer stepped closer to her, whispering urgently, We can still challenge his toll. We can argue shared road jurisdiction. That was the line I wanted. Shared jurisdiction? I said, perfect, because shared jurisdiction means shared maintenance responsibility. And that means shared financial burden. And that gate, I pointed at it, is your burden, not mine. The secretary chimed in, frustrated. We're not paying for your road. I almost pitted them. Almost. My road. I asked, but earlier today, you claimed this is HOA-maintained access. You declared it adopted, and you built the fence. So you've openly admitted you're maintaining a road you don't own. The president's jaw tightened. We didn't maintain your road. We maintained a community road. Show me the deed, I said. Dead silence. You can't show it, I continued, because you don't have it. Because I do. I pulled out my clipboard with the property lines, stamped by the county. I handed it to the treasurer. He studied it for a long second, then exhaled sharply. His whole posture changed, shoulders slumping, confidence draining, like someone had unplugged him. The president snatched the map away, scanned it, then glared at me like I had forged my own name. This doesn't mean anything, she snapped. It means everything, I replied, because it proves one important thing. Everything you built is on my land. The treasurer muttered, we may have exceeded the easement line. Exceeded the easement line? They didn't just exceed it. They trampled it, danced on it, and drilled steel poles into it. The residents had started gathering behind them, watching like it was a backyard play. They were recording, whispering, some laughing under their breath. The president saw her kingdom crumbling and tried one more desperate tactic. You are interfering with community flow, she declared loudly so everyone could hear. Your toll is creating a bottleneck and preventing residents from going about their daily lives. I smirked. Sounds like a management issue. You created the issue. No, I said, raising my voice just enough for the watching residents to hear. I merely posted terms for a road you decided to use. That's what you told me earlier. Your words, not mine. A few residents chuckled. One even clapped. She spun around and shouted at the crowd, This is illegal. You all know this is illegal. A voice shouted back, So it's blocking his road. Another added, Yeah, you started this. A third yelled, We told you to leave his land alone. Her power was slipping like sand through open fingers. She turned back to me, defeated but still angry enough to try one final threat. She shoved another paper toward me. This is your official notice. If you refuse to comply, the HOA will pursue legal action immediately. I didn't take the paper. I simply pointed to the sign. Any usage of the gate implies agreement with the toll terms. And since your board used it twice today, you collectively owe $20. Residents burst into laughter. The president's face turned crimson. The treasurer mumbled something about not having small bills. They got into their cars and drove off in a flustered caravan, nearly running over 2 residents in their retreat. The crowd dispersed slowly, but not before several people came up to me. Honestly, man, good for you. Hope you make a fortune off them. They deserve it. You got them good. One older resident whispered, Don't let them bully you. They've been pushing people around here for years. I nodded. I'm not done yet. And I meant it. The next morning, the first email hit. Subject line, Urgent HOA notice, illegal toll operations. The email accused me of interfering with community access, endangering residents, and violating homeowners' rights. It was sent to all 68 HOA households. My response? I replied all, Thank you for acknowledging that the HOA is using privately owned ranch land for community traffic. As stated in County Ordinance 4B, private road owners may impose reasonable usage fees. Residents started replying, angry, confused, blaming the HOA. Arguments broke out. Screenshots were taken. Threats of voting out the board started circulating. The president panicked. Within an hour, she sent a second email claiming the toll sign was fraudulent and unenforceable. So I sent reply all again with a PDF of my deed lines, gate photos, and the county's toll confirmation. Now the whole neighborhood knew the truth. The HOA had messed up badly, publicly, and legally. By midday, residents were begging the board to just work something out. Someone suggested offering me a monthly payment in exchange for removing the toll. Another suggested tearing down the fence. Another suggested dissolving the board entirely. But the president wasn't done fighting, because tyrants rarely quit when they're losing. That night, at 10 p.m., she tried her boldest and stupidest move yet. She showed up with bolt cutters. I saw her from my kitchen window, tiptoeing like a burglar with a mission. She gripped the bolt cutters, trying to look brave, but her hands were shaking like a dryer with bricks inside. She lifted the cutters to the lock, but before she could squeeze, I turned on the floodlights. She froze like a deer pinned in stadium lights. I walked outside slowly, calmly, like I had all the time in the world. She dropped the bolt cutters. They hit the dirt with a metallic clang that felt like victory. This is HOA property, she stuttered. No, I said, it's on my land, and you are holding tools intended for damage. She swallowed hard. I wasn't going to cut anything. I was inspecting the lock. In the dark, I asked, with bolt cutters? At 10 p.m., she sputtered, searching for excuses, but nothing came out. Leave, I said quietly. Now. She scrambled to pick up the bolt cutters, but I shook my head. Leave them. She ran. Not walked. Ran. The next morning, she had no idea what was waiting for her, because I had taken those bolt cutters straight to the sheriff's office and filed a property damage complaint. Not a criminal charge, just a civil one. Enough to scare. Enough to pressure. Enough to make the HOA legally uncomfortable. But the real blow came later that afternoon, when the county inspector arrived. The HOA had filed a complaint claiming my toll gate violated municipal code. But the inspector wasn't there for me. He was there for them, because he discovered something huge, something even I didn't know. The fence line wasn't just a little off. It was 13 feet into my property. 13 feet. On a recorded deed. On a private agricultural easement. On land the HOA had no right to touch. The inspector documented everything. Took photos. Measured angles. Called in a supervisor. The supervisor arrived with a folder. In that folder, a condemnation order. Not for my land. Not for my gate. For the HOA's fence. The county declared the entire installation unlawful obstruction of a private agricultural access route. They were ordered to remove it. Not in a week. Not in a month. Within 72 hours. I swear I could feel the earth itself celebrating. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, the HOA board gathered again at the gate, this time wearing defeat like a uniform. They looked smaller, less confident, more human. The president wouldn't even look at me. They had no choice, no power, no argument left. They quietly removed the fence panel by panel, unscrewing each post, tossing them into trailers. Residents watched from balconies and driveways. Some cheered under their breath. Some filmed. Some shook their heads at the humiliation. 3 hours later, the fence was gone. The padlock gate was gone. The authority they tried to impose over my land, gone. But the toll sign, still standing. The treasurer approached me. We removed the fence, he said quietly. So, will you take down the toll? No, I replied. His eyebrows shot up. But why? Because your residents still use my access road. Removing the fence doesn't remove the traffic. He stared at me, stunned. You can negotiate, I said, or you can keep paying the toll. The choice is yours. The board walked away defeated, but the story wasn't over yet. The morning after the county inspector's visit, I stepped outside and looked at the gate. The sunlight reflected off the toll sign I had posted days ago, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt calm. The HOA fence was gone. The metal post, the lock, the chain, all removed. But the sign, still standing. Perfect. Unmoved. A symbol of every move they had underestimated. I checked my emails and found them flooding in. Complaints, panicked questions, even apologies from residents. They were realizing the truth. The HOA had been wrong from the very beginning. They had acted illegally, overstepped boundaries, and created the perfect scenario for me to take control. The residents were frustrated, yes, but more importantly, they were now aware. Awareness shifts power, and power shifts outcomes. By mid-morning, the HOA president showed up again, looking less like a confident authority figure and more like a cat caught in the rain. She hesitated at the gate, glancing nervously at the posted terms, and then at me standing calmly on my property line. She opened her mouth, trying to speak, but the words seemed to dissolve into the warm morning air. I walked toward her, slowly, maintaining the calm I had cultivated over the last few days. "Good morning," I said. "I trust the county inspection went well." She blinked, clearly flustered. We just came to discuss the toll." "The toll stands," I interrupted gently. "It's fair. It's documented. And legally, it's enforceable. I've gone out of my way to make it transparent for everyone involved. There's no dispute here, only compliance." She opened her mouth again, but I held up my hand. "Please, let's save the arguments for court, shall we? I'm confident the county will see exactly where the responsibility lies." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't argue further. She glanced at the residents in their cars, some of whom were recording, and then finally muttered, We will review this." I smiled. That's all I needed. That tiny concession told me that the HOA knew they were beaten, but they were too proud to admit it outright. Pride can delay the inevitable, but it can't prevent it. Over the next few days, I formalized the toll system. I set up a simple online payment portal, documented all traffic, and communicated with residents in professional, respectful manner. No yelling, no threats, just facts, legality, and transparency. The irony was delicious. The same HOA that had tried to control every inch of my property, every movement of my vehicles, and every action of my life now had to comply with my posted terms if they wanted access. They had inadvertently built a business for me, a legal toll road on my own land. Residents adjusted quickly. Some grumbled. Some paid cheerfully, but all of them followed the posted rules. And slowly, the narrative shifted. Where once the HOA wielded authority through fear and intimidation, I now exercise authority through fairness, clarity, and legality. The power had shifted. But the best moment came one afternoon when I saw the HOA president attempting to sneak through the gate without paying. I watched quietly from the porch, letting her reach the gate. As she paused to glance at the toll sign, her face fell. I walked over slowly. "Hi there," I said politely but firmly. "You're aware that all access requires a fee?" She swallowed, stammered, and finally said, I thought exceptions." "No exceptions," I said with a small smile. "Fairness applies to everyone. That's how it works." The tension in her shoulders was palpable. She paid the fee, muttered something under her breath, and drove through. I didn't smile at her directly. I didn't gloat. I simply returned to my porch, letting the moment settle. That's the beauty of justice delivered legally. It doesn't need to scream. It just exists, and everyone else sees it. By the end of the week, the HOA had resigned themselves to reality. The gate, the toll, and my authority over my own land were undisputed. The community began to recognize the absurdity of the previous abuses. Conversations shifted. Complaints against the HOA multiplied. Requests for meetings dwindled. I had turned chaos into order, confrontation into leverage, and conflict into revenue. I sat on my porch one evening, the golden light spilling across the ranch, the horses grazing quietly, and a sense of calm washing over me. Everything was peaceful again. My land, my rules, my freedom, finally restored. And more than that, every illegal or aggressive action taken by the HOA had only reinforced my position. The lesson was clear. Power respects knowledge, preparation, and the courage to act when others overreach. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, I realized this wasn't just about property or tolls. It was about asserting rights, standing firm, and showing that clever, measured strategy can win against even the most overconfident opponents. The HOA had underestimated me at every turn, and their own actions had paved the way for my success. Before I went inside for the evening, I took one last look at the gate and the toll sign. The wind rustled gently through the trees, carrying with it the satisfaction of a battle well fought. I knew there would always be challenges, but today had been a complete victory, not through force, but through smart planning, legal knowledge, and patience. And that's the lesson I want to leave with you, watching the story unfold. Never underestimate the power of preparation. Always know your rights. And remember that clever, strategic action often trumps brute force or intimidation. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more real-life battles where strategy and ingenuity win the day, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. You won't want to miss the next story, because the lessons here are just the beginning. Trust me, there's more coming, more drama, more tactics, and more moments where smart moves completely turn the tables. Because in the end, it's not just about winning a single battle. It's about knowing how to win the war.